The rain over Hanam-dong was thin and persistent. The kind that clung to windows like fingerprints of a long-forgotten memory. It fell in soft, steady lines across the glass walls of a quiet, dimly lit studio on the 10th floor of an old stone building near the river. Inside that studio, where the scent of heated equipment mixed with cold winter air, Kang Dong-won stepped through the door in silence. His coat was still damp from the rain, his hair tousled, and his eyes carried a heaviness that seemed older than time itself. There were no managers trailing behind him, stylists fixing the folds of his collar, no PR team rehearsing lines into his ear. Tonight was different. Yet he had chosen to come alone, because the weight he carried was his alone. And the truth he came to speak, after years of silence, speculation, and carefully placed smiles, was something he would only entrust to his own trembling voice. When he sat down in front of the camera, the studio seemed to shift. The lighting technician lowered the brightness until his face was illuminated in soft gold, a color that made his eyes appear deeper, glossier. The interviewer greeted him gently, but even her warmth couldn't dissolve the tension in the room. It wasn't discomfort, it was anticipation. Everyone felt the gravity of the moment. The sense that a man who guarded his heart with exceptional discipline was about to open a door he had kept locked for far too long. As the first question landed, "How have you been?" Dong-won exhaled. An exhale so long and fragile that it almost sounded like breaking. Toward his gaze briefly, gathering the courage to peel back the layers he had spent years building. "And carrying something," he said softly, looking up again with eyes that reflected the dim light. "And I think I'm tired of carrying it alone." The interviewer waited, allowing the silence to breathe. The conversation slowly drifted toward the rumors, the endless rumors about his supposed secret marriage to Han Hyo-joo. Whispers born from their undeniable chemistry, fueled by the internet, magnified until even international press reported it as fact. He let out a small, sorrowful laugh. When the rumor first came out, he said, "I didn't feel angry. I felt strange. Because it wasn't true. Not yet." His voice cracked slightly on the last two words. He took a deep breath before continuing. "People believed I got married in secret. Fans created wedding images. Magazines wrote analyses. And some even congratulated us by mistake." His eyes glistened. "But the truth is, I was afraid to speak. Not because it was false, but because I wished it were real." The room fell utterly silent. Not even a camera clicked. Dawn broke inside his confession like a quiet storm. He went back to the beginning, recalling the first time he met Han Hyo-joo during a script meeting in Sangam-dong. The room had smelled faintly of fresh paper and warm coffee. And she had walked in wearing a white sweater, her hair tied loosely. Their eyes met for a second longer than strangers usually allow. It felt, he said, like time paused without asking. They worked together on a lang. And something unexplainable formed, not fast, not dramatic, but deep. Like roots quietly growing beneath soil. After filming ended, their connection didn't fade. It followed them into their schedules, into their off days, into their thoughts. And one day, without fireworks or confessions, they simply began meeting more often. They kept their relationship quiet, choosing small moments over grand gestures. They ate late dinners at a tiny Japanese restaurant in Hapjeong, where the owner treated them like ordinary customers. They walked near Yeonhudong late at night, hoodies up, hands brushing lightly but never fully clasping, just in case a hidden camera lurked somewhere. Their love existed softly, like a thread woven through the cracks of their busy lives. But the world never knew. And in some ways, he admitted, hiding it hurt him more than the rumors ever did. The interviewer asked why he had never denied the marriage rumors directly, even when they spiraled out of control. His eyes lowered. And when he lifted them again, they were filled with a sadness so raw it was almost poetic. "And deny it because," his voice faltered. He pressed his lips together, fighting the emotion. "Because I didn't want to say the words 'we're not married' when my heart wanted the opposite." The tears slipped down so silently that the cameraman didn't notice at first. Dong-won wiped them with the back of his hand, embarrassed. But he didn't stop speaking. "I've never cried about a rumor before," he said with a fragile smile. "But this one meant something to me." Admitted, gently, carefully, as if placing a delicate object on a table, "We are together. We have been together." Quietly, for a long time. The interviewer didn't speak. She didn't need to. His heart was speaking loud enough for both of them. He continued, revealing that the pressure, the fascination, the rumors, all of it pushed him into silence. Not because he wanted to hide Han Hyo-joo, but because he wanted to protect her from the harsh spotlight that devours what it touches. He explained how he feared that a premature announcement would twist their love into entertainment. How he worried the public might misinterpret their sincerity. Afraid, he said, his voice trembling. Afraid that if I opened the curtain too soon, our story would get ruined. He looked toward the window, where the lights of Seoul shimmered like distant stars through the rain. I wanted it to be real before the world heard about it. I wanted to tell you we are married only when it's her hand I can hold without hiding. The most vulnerable moment came when he finally spoke the sentence he had kept locked in his heart for years. I want to marry her someday, he whispered. Because of the rumors. Not because people expect it. Because she is the person I want to spend my life with. And then, almost in a whisper meant only for the quiet air around him, he added. When the time comes, I want it to be real. Completely real. Studio felt suspended in time. His confession, soft, trembling, and overflowing with sincerity, hung between the walls like a fragile miracle. The rain had almost stopped by the time the second part of the interview resumed, replaced by a mist that floated in the air like a thin veil. Studio in Hanam-dong had grown quieter, its walls absorbing the confession that had just unfolded inside them. But part 2 was not filmed in that studio. Dong-won had requested a different location, a place that held meaning for him. A place connected to the emotions he was finally allowing the world to see. The new location was a small, nearly hidden tea house in Sicheon. Between narrow alleys lined with old hanok roofs and quiet, dimly lit lanterns. The windows were fogged from the warmth inside, creating a soft halo of light around Dong-won as he sat at a low wooden table. The fragrance of jasmine tea drifted lazily through the air, mingling with the sound of distant footsteps on wet stone outside. This is where I come when I need to think, he said gently, glancing around the room. And where I realize what she means to me. Yor settled across from him, her voice low, though afraid to disturb the delicate intimacy of the moment. Said earlier that you stayed silent because it wasn't time. Is now the right time? Dong-won took a slow breath. Steam rising from his cup curled around his fingers, most like an invitation to warmth. Because, he began softly, I don't want to hide the person I love anymore. It wasn't a statement. It was a surrender. The silence that followed was tender, not heavy, not painful, but full of quiet acceptance. He leaned back slightly, eyes drifting toward the window where a thin line of evening light was breaking through the clouds. I used to think the best way to protect what I love was to keep it away from the world. But love doesn't grow in the dark. It deserves more than shadows. He spoke of Han Hyo-joo with a kind of reverence one rarely hears in interviews, careful, steady, as though every word held weight. He described her presence not as a spark, but as a calm that fills the room. Not dramatic, but grounding. Not loud, but unforgettable. Fall in love like in movies, he said with a faint smile. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't explosive. It was gradual. A quiet familiarity. A soft place to land after long days. Bond between them had grown through late-night conversations in cars parked along the Han River. Shared meals at restaurants known only to them. All gestures like warm drinks slipped into each other's hands on cold mornings. Handwritten notes tucked into scripts. Nothing glamorous about their love, no grand declarations. No flowers on red carpets. Performative affection. It was a love that lived in silence, in stolen moments, in the spaces between their breaths. That's why, he continued, when the marriage rumor spread, it hurt in a way I never expected. Because it wasn't true, but I wished it was. And admitting that felt too vulnerable. He swallowed, the memory clearly still tied inside his chest. Every time I denied the rumor in my head, it felt like I was denying my own feelings. Every time I imagined saying no, we're not married. Inside me whispered, but one day I want to be. That contradiction became too heavy to carry. The interviewer asked gently, did she know? She knew. She always knew. He went on to describe one night. Before the interview. When he had broken down in front of her, not from sadness. The overwhelming fear that public attention might crush the quiet life they had built. They had been sitting in his car near Namsan Tower. The city glowing beneath them like a blanket of tiny stars. Told her he was scared, not of commitment, not of love, but of the world twisting their story before it had the chance to fully grow. She held my hand, he said quietly. And she said, "We don't have to rush. Just stay with me." Those words had rewired something inside him. They didn't promise forever. But they promised enough. Enough to keep going. Enough to keep choosing. Enough to wait. Down at his hands as though remembering the way hers had rested there months ago. People think silence means uncertainty. For us, it was protection. We chose privacy because we valued what we had. The interviewer hesitated before asking the question countless fans around the world were waiting for. Do you see Han Hyo-joo as your future? Time, he didn't need to gather courage. His answer came instantly. Steady and unshakably sincere. Yes, he said. Absolutely, yes. His voice trembled, not from doubt. Immense relief of finally telling a truth he had carried like a secret flame. He continued, I don't know when. I don't know how. But I do know that I want to spend my life with her. He lifted his gaze, eyes shimmering. We're not married yet. The rumor is fake. But the feeling, the intention, the future we talk about, all of that is real. He described the conversations they had late at night, about small things like meals and movies. But also about bigger questions, where they would live someday. Kind of home they wanted. How they wished to raise children in a world that demanded too much from people like them. We speak about the future more than people think, he said. We don't plan it in detail. We just imagine it together. And every time we do, it feels right. The tea house grew dimmer as evening settled in. Lantern by the window casting long shadows across the table. He looked peaceful now. As though each confession lifted a stone from his chest. The interviewer's voice softened. What do you hope people understand from what you said today? He thought for a moment. Then replied with quiet conviction. I hope they understand that love doesn't need to be loud to be real. It's been quiet, but steady. Hidden, but honest. And I hope that when the day comes, people will bless us, not because we are celebrities, but because we are two humans who chose each other. Stood up slowly as the camera crew packed their equipment. Warmth of the tea house lingering on his skin. He stepped outside. The evening air greeted him with a light chill. The rain had stopped completely, leaving behind puddles that reflected the soft glow of street lamps. He walked down the narrow alley of Seochin quietly, coat swaying gently with each step. There was no urgency in his stride. No attempt to hide his face. For the first time in years, he looked like a man who was no longer running from the truth, but walking toward it with open hands. Before turning the corner, he paused and looked up at the sky, gray, calming, endlessly wide. We're not married yet, he whispered to no one but the fading light. But in my heart, I already chose her. The screen faded on that final line. Behind warmth, a soft ache, and a sense of beginning rather than ending. Love, after all, rarely arrives loudly. Sometimes it grows in silence. The moment a man is brave enough to speak it aloud.